Hello, my name is Hannah Hogan, and I'm going to be presenting my presentation on my special education topic I chose, which was emotional and behavioral disorders. I titled this Being Able to Understand EBD and Its Impact. My second slide talks about what EBD is. Emotional and behavioral disorders. This is a category of disabilities that affect student ability to learn and maintain appropriate behaviors and emotions within the classroom or school settings. I highlighted under idea that emotional disturbance means that it's a condition that exhibits one or more characteristics over a longer period of time for students, which then creates adverse effects for the child in educational performance, with academics, or social performance. Moving forward, I researched a lot about the stigma against EBD. I found that particularly interesting that there is such a negative stigma against EBD because of parents or families don't want to believe that their child has an emotional or behavioral disorder. And then I found that because of this stigma, this takes away from these students gaining special educational services. I took a quote from an article that I found from Kaufman and Batter that says, "We want people to care about young people's EBD and to see EBD as an undesirable, but to see it as a treatable condition and to support more effective ways of treating it." I found that as I researched along following the stigma of EBD, that there are many strategies and things that we can, as teachers and families, try to do to reduce that stigma. I also found that there was little research on EBD and the effect of more developed research that can have on EBD and the future for these students. I also talked about, in my research, Kaufman and Batter again found 4 suggestions aiming at changing the perception of this stigma against EBD. I'm just going to summarize a little bit about those suggestions. So the first one was including and discussing these instances with parents and the children, some things resulting from the behaviors and the treatment that can be done for it. The second one was recognizing the reality of these differences and how it's impacting the student's learning. So taking a moment to recognize the disorder that the student may have and how we can treat it. Number 3, the benefits of special education on students with EBD. Students with EBD, if they received special education services, they would be put in the correct environment, they would be gaining the correct resources, maybe pull-out services, push-in if they needed to be in a self-contained room, different aspects of special education that could support students with EBD. And lastly, again, working to implement these instructional interventions as needed or as planned. Moving forward, some characteristics of EBD include emotional distress, behavioral, and academic challenges. So some emotional distress can include anxiety or depression, mood swings. Some behavioral characteristics may include aggression, defiance of the student, withdrawing from peers, noticing the student spending more time on their own. And then, of course, these also impact their academic challenges, so impacting their performance or learning in the classroom setting. A lot of times EBD can have a big impact on the emotional side or low self-esteem it can cause for students, which can then further impact their academics. Next, I spoke about the impact that EBD has on students. Emotional and behavioral disorders has a large impact on students. Again, they endure an academic impact, social impact, and the emotional and behavioral impact. I touched a little bit upon how this impacts them academically. So I stated that students struggle with staying on task, showing struggle in their school performance. A lot of students can avoid academic tasks and lash out in those behaviors to avoid those tasks. I also noticed a big impact on this socially for students. So they can struggle with relationships. They may struggle to communicate these emotions they're having. They can be defiant towards teachers or any adult figure that they see in that is trying to aid the behavior. They struggle with the emotional instability and experience, again, things like anxiety and depression. A lot of this can lead to low self-esteem, not a lot of confidence, and can further lead into physical aggression. Some strategies that can help students with EBD. A big strategy that I found in several articles that I researched was prevention and early intervention. So this is something that can come before to kind of help those behaviors and help figure out for teachers and families what we can do, what we can put in place to make this student successful. So a quote I found from one of my articles from Shores and Jack states, prevention and early intervention can eliminate or reduce the severity of behavioral and emotional problems of childhood and improve academic outcomes. So again, if we are getting the strategies that we need from the source and starting right at the beginning, then we are able to create that pathway for these students to be successful. Without this early intervention, a lot of children can display behavioral problems and are likely to engage in more intensive and serious problems as they continue to develop. So again, having that early intervention prevents these behaviors. Another strategy I noticed in my research was classroom management. I think this follows along all educational backgrounds for students. Classroom management is a really big aid in helping teachers in the classroom to create and maintain those expectations. But I found that a lot of classroom management strategies also aided in helping students with EBD. So for example, classroom management strategies arranging in physical, temporal, or social context can facilitate effective instruction and behavior control. Again, controlling the behavior and the environment before figuring out how the behavior was triggered and what we can do to get off of the behavior and focus more on what the student needs. The need for special education services and how we can reduce this stigma. So I ended my presentation speaking about this because I found that the stigma against EBD was very large and it took away from these students gaining their special education services, which I believe is truly impactful for these specific students. I spoke about in this part of my presentation that a lot of students with EBD are eligible for a variety of special ed services, but because of the negative stigma against it, a lot of families opt out of it because they do not want to believe that their student needs to receive special education services. I think speaking more about this and normalizing this can make families realize the special education services create positive benefits for the students, especially students with EBD. A few things I noticed that can help reduce this stigma or the impact that special ed services have. So interventions such as treatments and mental health can be beneficial. A lot of services in special ed, such as supplementary aids, positive behavior intervention plans can also aid in EBD within the special education setting. Sometimes a self-contained setting or pull-out services can also be beneficial for these students. Ending or reducing at least the stigma around the negative aspect of EBD would come with a lot more discussion about it, a lot of more developed research to show families, teachers, students that maybe the special education setting or services are best for their child and how much it could benefit them. In conclusion, a lot of students with emotional and behavioral disorders face many unique challenges, but we as teachers and families control how we work with these students in their education. We are controlling of how they are going to succeed. Being able to understand EBD and again providing more developed research is going to be essential to create these inclusive and supportive environments for our students. I also ended my presentation with a call to action. Again, I stated multiple times about the more research and effective practices that are needed on EBD education. This can really help these students to receive these special ed services and to enhance the unique learning needs that these students require. That concludes my presentation on emotional and behavioral disorders. Thank you so much.